What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
This is episode 84 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. There once was a little girl who was sitting on the beach with her father. They were watching the sunset over the horizon, and she was completely enamored with the sight which she beheld before her. As she watched the sun lower past the horizon and get smaller and smaller, she just stared. She'd never looked into the sun before, but stared as the sun got smaller and smaller, and the sky got darker. As the sun passed down past the horizon, and it was completely out of sight at this point, she looked up to her father and said, "Again! Again!" with a glee and a belief that her father could make it happen again. He looked down at her and said, "I can't make it happen again. I'm not capable of making that happen again." With a down face, she looked away, back at the water, then back up at her father, almost perplexed with the idea that her father was not able to make this sun drop down behind the horizon once again. She began to get sad. She began to have this emotional burst, as if realizing her father was unable to do this beautiful thing that she thought he had initially done in the first place. Seeing her face, her father looked to her, put his arm around her, and said, "I can't make this happen again. Maybe we can do this tomorrow. Maybe it can happen again. Tomorrow." But she wanted it now. Her father continued by saying, "Sometimes in life we only have one opportunity. We have one chance to see the beauty, or we have one chance to feel a way that we're feeling. But when it's over, that doesn't mean it's time for us to be sad or upset. What we can do is understand that that is our opportunity to relish and to appreciate the moments in which we have things. Those times, those opportunities for us are sometimes only once. They're only going to happen once. And as we go through this time, we have to remember that this may be the only time we get to see or feel or appreciate that moment. With these words that her father spoke to her, her spirits lifted. And she believed that her opportunity to see this sunset again would happen again tomorrow. Now, whether it happened again the next day or not is unknown. But what we do know is the lesson that her father taught, we can all take something from. That we have one opportunity, one chance at this life. Now, sometimes our opportunity is going to be, or we'll have multiple opportunities to do something, whether it's spend time with somebody or do something. But when we're doing it, we have no idea that it's going to happen again. We have no idea. We have no promise of tomorrow. We have no promise that what it is that we're doing now is going to have an effect, or it is going to have a positive effect on the people in our lives, or in the spirit in which we intend it. So, with that knowledge and with that understanding, we can go out, we can appreciate the life that we have right now. It's a lot like that idea of that YOLO, that you only live once. You do only live once, but don't waste it by continually looking at things and doing things that are going to have no value. But as we go through different times and different stories and we speak with different people on this show, we get to learn how people are. We get to learn who people are. We get to learn the lessons that they've learned. And the fact that some of the things that they went through and they go through, they're glad it only happened once. They would have preferred it to happen no times. However, sometimes they're happy it happened once. And then the people who are maybe not so lucky that get to see it again. There's something about those people that God decided that they have the wherewithal, they have the strength to be able to handle that. And that's who those people are. Whether it's police officers or firefighters or veterans or whomever, they go through these times. They have one chance to do something right. And whether that one time was their opportunity to save someone's life or that opportunity to save their own, we don't know. But they had one chance. And they took that chance and they did it right. Today I'm going to read 2 stories for you about 3 different officers who probably didn't and don't consider themselves heroes. No hero, no real hero will consider themselves a hero. And that's why when I started this podcast, I started looking at people and I start saying, hey, I want to have you come. You want to come on the show? I'm not a hero. They don't consider themselves hero. And that right there is what makes them the hero that they are. If you consider yourself a hero, if you consider yourself that person that people need to know, perhaps you're not as heroic. You're not the hero that you should be. You should be humble. Put yourself out there and say, hey, you know what? I did some stuff. I'll tell the story, but it's not fantastic. It's not great. It's just a story. I decided if people were interested as I tell it to them. And they said, hey, you should write a book or you should do this. Okay, I'll do that. But then you talk to them, hey, you want to come on my podcast and you want to tell your story? No, they can just read the book because they're humble, because they don't consider themselves a hero. However, I tell them that I do. The things that they do, the things that people say about them are heroic, and they relent and say, okay, I'll come on, but I still don't think of myself as a hero. And that right there tells me that what they have, the story that they have to tell, is heroic. The person whom they are is heroic. Captain Wayne Longo and Detective Fred Swanson of the Idaho State Police. Methamphetamine represents the fastest growing drug threat in America today. Meth is a dangerous, unpredictable drug that can be lethal, also known as speed, ice, and crystal meth. It is a potent central nervous system stimulant like cocaine. Meth can be smoked, snorted, injected, or taken orally, and its appearance varies depending on how it is used. Usually, it's a white, odorless, bitter-tasting powder that dissolves easily in water. Methamphetamine use produces an increase in blood pressure, body temperature, and rate of breathing while it dilates the pupils. The drug produces temporary hyperactivity, euphoria, a sense of increased energy, and tremors. High doses or chronic use has been associated with increased nervousness, irritability, and paranoia. Users who are under the influence of the drug and in a paranoid state often become violent. Many recorded attempted murders and homicides have involved perpetrators high on meth. Because withdrawal from high doses produces severe depression, it has led to many recorded suicides and cases of self-inflicted wounds. Chronic use produces a psychosis similar to schizophrenia and is characterized by paranoia, picking at the skin, self-absorption, and auditory and visual hallucinations. During tweaking, the most dangerous stage in a binge cycle, abusers are irritable and paranoid because they haven't slept in 3 to 15 days. Despite their intense craving for more meth at this stage, no dosage will create the euphoric high which frustrates the user and leads to unpredictability and potential for violence. Unlike heroin and cocaine, methamphetamine is one drug that users can manufacture themselves. Formulas for making meth are easy to find on the internet, and the components are readily available from chemical wholesale houses or foreign sources. Although Mexican crime groups produce most of the meth distributed in the United States in super labs in California and Mexico, setting up a meth lab doesn't require a college-educated chemist. In fact, more than 90% of the suspects arrested for cooking meth aren't chemists, which makes it easy to understand why there are so many explosions and fires in the homes, trailers, and motel rooms housing illegal labs. Now, just a side note, the majority of meth is no longer made in the United States. They don't have rolling meth labs, and finding meth labs in and on properties within the United States is fairly rare anymore. Not to say it doesn't happen, it is fairly rare. The majority of meth is manufactured out of the country. Most of the meth that's on the West Coast is manufactured in Mexico or other countries in which you can get precursor substances from those other countries. It'll be produced and then shipped to the United States, smuggled in, brought in somehow, in which it is then distributed up major arteries and corridors such as the interstates and whatnot. Majority of meth now is being overtaken with the use of heroin and fentanyl. They'll mix the drugs together, so people that are on the low based off of the opiate, whether fentanyl or heroin, is then counteracted by the high of the meth, and it causes this up and down, stay awake when I'm trying to fall asleep, or fall asleep when I'm trying to stay awake, sort of thing that the two drugs do. And the high becomes apparently very desirable. This story is actually a little bit older, which, as it said, meth is the biggest drug today. It is actually weaning off from that. Cocaine is making a comeback, and heroin is actually kind of taking a back seat. Fentanyl is probably the number one drug right now in America, and that's just my theory. I don't have anything to back that up with, but from what I see on the day-to-day, that's how I understand it. Back to the story. Even though the amount of meth produced by mom and pop labs is small compared to the output of super labs, their proliferation throughout the country has created supersized headaches for law enforcement. In 1993, the Drug Enforcement Agency seized 218 methamphetamine labs. In 1999, the DEA alone seized over 2,000 labs, while federal, state, and local law enforcement officers combined seized over 7,000 labs. Law enforcement faces extreme danger whenever it attempts to close a meth laboratory and arrest the workers inside. The chemicals used to manufacture meth are highly explosive and flammable, and because prison terms can be lengthy for those caught making meth, the labs are often booby-trapped. A police officer opening a door might face a 12-gauge shotgun rigged to go off automatically, or might trip a wire that releases an exotic animal like a lion or a cheetah. Meth manufacturers have been known to build elaborate escape tunnels. As they escape undetected, they blow up the laboratory and any evidence with a remote-controlled device. Clandestine meth laboratories are a substantial health and safety threat to their communities. Not only are the hazardous chemicals involved often disposed of improperly, creating environmental problems that require expensive cleanup, but fires, explosions, and toxic gas are a constant threat to the general public. These risks are of no concern to operators of small labs, however, who spend as little as $1,000 for chemicals that will generate $10,000 in methamphetamine. 42-year-old Jack James Jensen meth laboratory in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was closed down when he was arrested in 1998 for manufacturing methamphetamine. His manufacturing equipment and chemicals were taken into custody as evidence. He ran a small lab, but he had been armed when he was arrested and owned a pit bull that had been trained to attack. When Jensen posted bail, he walked out of jail and apparently right back into the lucrative world of meth production. On the morning of December 7th, 1999, detectives Paul Berger and Guy Shensky from the Idaho State Police were conducting surveillance on a Coeur d'Alene residence where, according to informants, Jensen had set up another meth lab while awaiting trial. If Jensen was arrested again, there would be no bail and a long term in prison. The house was a typical residential area house. Children walked by on their way to nearby schools, and just 400 feet away, a daycare center nestled among the other homes. Around 8 a.m., as a detective watched, someone opened a window of the house to throw something out. When the fluid hit the ground, a white cloud dispensed a strong chemical odor. The familiar odor of ammonia confirmed that at least one constituent of meth was in the house. Dumping a hazardous chemical gave the detectives the probable cause they needed to obtain a search warrant. Before the raid, detectives briefed law enforcement personnel and the fire department. The whiteboard in the meeting room resembled a page from a football player's playbook. This was not a game, however. The consequences could be deadly if the play wasn't executed exactly as planned. The Coeur d'Alene Fire Department would be positioned a block away, and an ambulance would be standing by. Law enforcement would cover all the building exits. Around 10:30 a.m., a team of detectives and Captain Wayne Longo approached the house and announced that they had a search warrant. Suddenly, a fire started inside, producing a thick, acrid black smoke. Police later reported that the suspect had set chemicals on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence of his crime. The officers broke down the back door to find 23-year-old Coeur d'Alene woman and a 31-year-old woman from Hayden Lake, Idaho, asleep in the living room. The officers had to shake the women aggressively to awaken them. As the flames increased, Captain Longo and Detective Berger and Shensky removed the two women from the house. According to Longo, the women were not especially cooperative with the police on scene. They stated that Jensen wasn't inside. Now, if they were hard to wake up, I'm thinking they'd been up for the previous 3 days or however long. That's my best bet. That's what I'm assuming. That's my theory on this. If they're hard to wake up, they were in such a deep sleep because of their meth use before. And then they say he's not inside. So I'm guessing the chemicals just lit themselves on fire. We shall see. Within seconds, the fire department arrived to discover noxious black smoke filling the house. Shortly, the west end of the residence was totally engulfed in the blaze, with flames rising as high as 40 feet. The situation was dangerous not only for law enforcement officers and firefighters, but for the public as well. Full of flammable chemicals, the burning house could explode at any moment. The roof could collapse, trapping people inside. The suspect himself presented a potential danger. At any moment, he might fire upon anyone close by, though the two women instead insisted that the suspect was not in the house. The detectives knew he was. Longo and Detective Fred Swanson, who'd been on surveillance during the briefing, decided to enter the residence as police backup to protect the firefighters. Longo donned protective gear and a self-contained breathing apparatus, as did Swanson, who had been a volunteer firefighter with the Moscow, Idaho Volunteer Fire Department from 1982 to 1985. Fire itself didn't concern Swanson, but explosives and toxic chemicals are always a concern, he told me. Other law enforcement officers evacuated a 4-block area surrounding the house. The preschool was evacuated while the elementary school was shut down, with children locked inside for their safety. With their guns drawn, Longo and Swanson entered through the back door, crawling from room to room as they searched for Jensen on the main floor. When they didn't find him, they searched the second floor of the 2-story home, but the suspect was nowhere to be found. As the men were heading toward the door, they noticed a small wooden door that appeared to lead to a root cellar or basement area. When they opened the door, they directed their weapons at several loose cinder blocks under the stairs. Someone was hiding in the crawl space. Swanson recalls, "I cautiously looked into the hole and saw Jensen lying against the block wall to my right. It appeared he was unconscious at that time. I told Captain Longo that we had found him. Captain Longo went to the bottom of the stairs and called for the fire department's help and returned to my location. The captain returned as I was yelling at Jensen to come out of the crawl space. I knew he would not be able to go into the crawl space and pull him out. There was not enough room for that. After several yells at Jensen, I finally saw his foot move. Come out of there. We're your only hope to get out, Longo yelled. But the figure in the basement refused. Obviously, there was no time for a lengthy negotiation, but the officers managed to coax the man from his hiding place, and as he crept toward them on his hands and knees, they grabbed him. The search was finally over, and the safety of the outside world was within reach. Then Swanson heard the alarm from his breathing apparatus. The first time I was really concerned was when my SCBA started ringing, giving me a warning that I was running out of air. He and Longo raced to escape with their suspect. Though firefighters had extinguished the fire by this time, every space in the house had filled with thick chemical smoke. I can't breathe, Jensen muttered. And suddenly he lost consciousness. His heart had stopped beating. At great personal peril, the officers remained with the suspect until they could lift him up the stairs to safety with the help of firefighters. Once outside, emergency personnel administered CPR to Jensen. Swanson's air supply ran out just as he hit the outside door. We felt pretty good to save the guy, even though we went there to arrest him, Longo said later. What he always wants is for everybody to go home, for nobody to get hurt. The police found a stolen 12-gauge shotgun in the house. The house itself had been rented from a couple of Cataldo, Idaho residents. Jensen would spend 5 days in intensive care at Kootenai Medical Center. After 3 months in jail, he posted bond and was out of jail once again. And once again, he set up a meth laboratory. After police had raided his meth lab 3 times in 3 years, Jackie Jensen pleaded guilty to 1 count of attempted drug manufacturing and 2 counts of attempted drug trafficking. He was sentenced to a minimum mandatory sentence of at least 4 years in prison. Meth is the number one priority the state police focus on, Longo said. At the time of this particular incident, law enforcement had already discovered some 90 meth labs in Idaho's 5 northern counties that year, an increase of 125% from the previous year. In the year 2000, police reported that 4 out of every 5 criminals in Idaho were related to methamphetamine. When asked why his region has led the state in lab seizures, Captain Longo replied that 1, it's a booming area, and 2, they're an aggressive squad and very efficient at what they do. Maybe we've stopped the potential disaster every time we raid these things, he hopes. The guys really feel good when they take these things down. His region is also ahead of the curve on education about the dangers of methamphetamine. Part of the strategy of the state police is to educate the public about meth labs and meth use by speaking to community groups, service organizations, schools, and parent-teacher groups. The epidemic continues throughout the area, taking down not only the drug users, but also the other victims of the drug, those who are abused, assaulted, or abandoned by the users, including the many children whose parents are in jail or dead. Added to these problems is the potential danger to passerby and nearby property from explosions and fires. Captain Wayne Longo and Detective Fred Swanson took extraordinary measures to rescue Jackie Jensen while putting their own lives at risk. Though any one of us might enter a burning building to save a loved one, a child, or a vulnerable person, how many would come to the rescue of a methamphetamine cook who set his own house on fire and putting the lives of those he knows in danger? In saving Jensen's life, Captain Longo and Detective Swanson acted courageously and selflessly. They entered a fully engulfed building to protect the members of the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department. Cognizant of the dangers they might face, the two officers knew that they had to find anyone who might still be inside, even if that person was involved in a methamphetamine lab. In the letter in which he recommended Captain Longo and Detective Swanson for inclusion in the book Police Heroes by Chuck Whitlock, Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Ford, Deputy Director of the Idaho State Police, wrote that they acted above and beyond the call of duty when they entered the burning house, fully aware of the limitations of the protective gear they wore and knowing the danger of the environment they were entering. As a result of their persistency and dedication to law enforcement, the suspect was dragged from the basement and taken to safety. At 48, Wayne Longo is a 25-year veteran of the Idaho State Police with 16 years as supervisor of detectives and 2 years in charge of crowd intervention team. Longo makes the majority of public presentations about meth labs, revealing the potential dangers while providing safety tips. He's married with 2 children. Detective Swanson became a special agent with the Idaho Bureau of Investigation in 1990, following jobs with the Moscow, Idaho Police Department and the Lada County Sheriff's Department. He's been a polygraph examiner since 1993. He has 3 children ranging in age from 12 to 17. Captain Longo and Detective Swanson received Valor Awards from the Idaho State Police, the agency's highest award for courageously placing their lives in jeopardy to save the life of another person. The 2 heroes also put one more meth lab out of business. Who knows how many lives were saved as a result. Now, as I mentioned, this story is a little bit older, and thinking about that, those 2 officers are most likely retired by now. But you've got to think that, as it said, how many of us would go into that burning building? Go save the baby? Sure, we're all about that. We're all about the accolades for something like that. But to go save the meth dealer, the drug addict, the person that intentionally caught the place on fire to hurt people? That's a question a lot of people may not be able to readily answer. But that's what heroes do. They don't do it thinking about who the person is. They do it thinking about the fact that it's a person that needs to be saved. The third hero I'm going to talk about today is Sergeant Craig Hogman of the Clark County, Washington Sheriff's Office. As a car in front of me led me through the beautiful 3-line streets of an almost picture-perfect old neighborhood on a brilliant spring afternoon, I forced myself to imagine the horrific events that had taken place at this tranquil scene. Pulling over to the curb, Sergeant Craig Hogman of the Clark County Sheriff's Office stepped out of his car to tell me that this is where the getaway car had stopped and turned sideways, so the shooters inside were in a better position to ambush him. It was readily apparent that the events of that day do not lie deep in his subconscious but are fresh in his mind, ready to surface with a minimum of prompting. The emotion of that day played out on Craig's face and in his words as he described the event to me. "I think I lost a little bit of my soul. A little bit," Craig admitted. Hogman was 49 when the incident occurred. With the sheriff's office since 1974, he began his law enforcement career as a custody officer, called a jailer in those days. He has served as deputy sheriff detective in the Major Crimes Unit and sergeant. Those who know Craig attest to his professionalism, his calm nature, his patience, and his compassion. The three young men who rocked this quiet Vancouver, Washington neighborhood one violent day in 1997 tested all these attributes. Aaron Ahern, 25, Michael Brock, 24, and Ronald Bianchi, 25, executed a game plan on October 17, 1997, that would ultimately result in two of their deaths. The third would be sentenced to 72 years in prison. They had needed money, and more urgently, there was a local drug dealer who wanted to be paid. Ahern and Bianchi feared the dealer would take payment out of their hides if they didn't clear the debt. Their game plan involved setting off a pipe bomb as a diversionary tactic, then robbing a bank. Bianchi, who liked the scheme, talked Brock into it. Ahern would be the bomb maker, and Bianchi would boost 3 cars for getaway purposes. It would be a breeze, and nobody would be hurt. This wouldn't be the first time the three had broken the law. In 1992, Aaron Ahern was convicted for burglarizing and stealing cash from an Idaho Burger King restaurant. After serving 5 months in county jail, he moved to Vancouver, Washington, where his probation officer lost track of him. He then began using methamphetamine and frequently used marijuana. Although he could be personable, there was something dark, almost evil about him, according to his brother John. Even as a child, he talked about robbing banks. Michael J. Brock, or Crazy Mike, as Bianchi called him, was originally from Anchorage, Alaska. Brock had been convicted of attempted second-degree robbery in Clark County. His probation officer repeatedly cited him for not reporting in as ordered, failing to notify the probation department of his changes of address, and not paying back the $7,104 he stole from his robbery victim. Ronald J. Bianchi, a junior high school dropout, was twice convicted of auto theft in eastern Washington. During one of those arrests, the police found syringes and other drug paraphernalia in the car, along with a heavily drugged Bianchi. Like Brock, Bianchi didn't report to his probation officer and didn't make restitution to his victims or pay court costs. Bianchi's girlfriend, Rachel Shannon Barnes, 22, was 5 months pregnant with his child. She had left home 7 years earlier and had no arrest prior to October 1997. She would later be accused of helping to rob a home and steal a gun that was used in the bank robbery. She would also be accused of helping to case the bank and disposing of the sawed-off shotgun barrels. "That was an interesting day for me," Vicky Hogman, Craig's wife, said in what I consider to be one of the biggest understatements I've ever heard. Vicky had always accepted Craig's job for what it was. She'd been raised by a father who was in law enforcement. According to Craig, she doesn't say anything. We don't talk about it, but I know every day is difficult for her. On that day, Craig had come home to invite Vicky to lunch. As she described it, he gave me a kiss and said, "I'll see you in a half hour." And I started to cry. And he gave me a hug and said, "Oh, Vic, get over this." But I was very sad and I didn't know why. I had decided to go for a walk because I couldn't pull myself out of it. A lady, one of my neighbors, stood and watched me coming forward. As I got closer, she said, "You look very sad today. Are you all right?" I walked over to her and I started to cry. And I said, "I don't know, but I'm feeling very sad and I don't know why." As Craig said, this is a woman's intuition. That's something that we don't do very often anymore. That's something that, our neighbors might see us upset. We might see, but do we ever ask? Obviously, these people may have had more of a relationship, closer neighbors or whatever, but how often are we that close to our neighbors that they can see us, and that even if they see us distraught, upset, whatever, that they would ask us, are you okay? It's a rarity, but it's one of those things that we've talked about before on here. If you see someone not doing good, ask them what's up. Ask them if they're okay. Ask them if there's anything you can do. The crime spree started about 10:30 a.m. with an explosion in a 40-foot container behind the Kmart on Andreessen Road in Vancouver. The three men used a stolen 1982 Chevy Camaro to get to the site, then ditched it for a 1987 Chrysler LeBaron. 3 minutes later, at the scene, the fire department determined there was no smoke and no fire. Almost an hour later, at 11:43 a.m., ATF agents were on their way to investigate. At 11:05 a.m., 911 was alerted to an armed robbery at Wells Fargo Bank, Vancouver Mall branch. Then at 11:18, 3 armed robbers in ski masks, trench coats, and gloves entered a Sea First Bank on Mill Plain Boulevard and held everyone in the bank at gunpoint. The first man into the bank was armed with an SKS 7.62 assault rifle. The second carried a sawed-off shotgun under each arm. The third held a .22 caliber Ruger semi-automatic pistol and a shotgun. 2 calls from Sea First Bank were made to 911 minutes after the robbers left the building. The bank manager made the first call, stating that less than several $1,000s had been taken from 3 tellers' drawers, and that one teller had given the robbers a dye pack that would explode shortly. A distraught teller made the second call. An eyewitness called 911 to report that the bank had been robbed and the robbers were driving a maroon Chrysler with the license plate TRE 455. 2 of the bank robbers were in the front seat and 1 was in the back seat. All 3 had rifles and were wearing black ski masks. The Vancouver Police Department and Clark County Sheriff's Office dispatched vehicles to the bank, and all units were told to be on the lookout for the 3 robbers and the vehicle. The police dispatcher also notified the FBI. Reports of the robbers continued to come in to 911. One witness reported that he saw one of the robbers change the Chrysler's license plate to TTH 353. Another described what 2 of the hold-up men were wearing. One was in dark blue pants and a light blue shirt, the other in a flannel jacket in earth tone colors and high-lace combat boots. What no one knew was that the robbers had switched getaway cars again, exchanging the Chrysler, which was later found running with its windshield wipers going, for a stolen 1966 Mustang. Around 11:20 a.m., Sergeant Hogman was headed home for lunch, but he'd been following the activity involving the explosion and armed bank robbery on his police radio. He noticed a black Mustang with 3 passengers, and his gut instinct told him to follow it. Though he was only following them at about 30 miles per hour in an unmarked Ford, he decided to back off a little because he didn't want to confront them until he had backup. But the driver became aware that he was being followed and sped up. Sergeant Hogman called the dispatcher to give his location and say he was in pursuit of the black Mustang. Then Ahern opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle from the window of the right front seat. From the back seat, Brock fired at Hogman through the car window. Hogman calmly called dispatch to give his position and request backup. To protect himself, he used the dashboard of his car for cover, but stayed in pursuit. He might have been out of sight, but he was certainly not out of harm's way. Even though he was almost lying down in the front seat, the sergeant somehow managed to keep an eye on the road and stay behind the black Mustang. He listened to the bullets blast through his windshield and rip through the driver's seat where he had been sitting just moments before. One bullet punctured the radiator, sending steam everywhere. Another bullet struck his radar unit. but the determined policeman kept driving. Twice the driver of the Mustang put enough distance between the Mustang and the unmarked police car to park their vehicle in the street and at an angle in failed attempts to ambush Hogman, but Hogman continued his pursuit. Even though he was under siege, the sergeant didn't want to return fire during the chase because of his concern about stray bullets in the neighborhood. He'd pursue the man past houses, passing cars, an active construction site with workmen, a church, and a school. He knew that if the guys were bold enough to try to kill a police officer, they would certainly kill anyone who was unfortunate enough to get in their way. For the first time in his career, Hogman was in a gun battle with no protective vest, no immediate backup, and a shot-up, nearly worthless vehicle for cover. It would later be estimated that 60 rounds of ammunition had been fired at him, yet somehow he remained remarkably calm, radioing his speed and location regularly so that other units would know where to go. Later he would say that his faith and his training took over. Perhaps he should have also remembered the two promises he made to Vicky when he first became a police officer, that he would always wear his bulletproof vest and place his own safety before anything else. Perhaps he should have paid attention to Vicky's intuition and stayed home that day, but all he could think about was how to stop these crazed gunmen and protect his community. As the chase continued through the neighborhood at speeds approaching 70 miles per hour, it crossed paths with Vancouver police officers Laurent Zapata, 33, and Adam Millard, 30, both transfers to the area. Zapata had been on the Vancouver force for over 2 years, while Millard was only on his third shift when the Mustang sped by. Still fleeing the persistent Hogman in his shot-up vehicle, the robbers then opened fire upon the Vancouver Police Department squad car, which turned around to join the pursuit. Ahern tossed a grenade at the cars, but it misfired. Attempting another ambush setup, the Mustang crashed into a tree. Police on the scene would later find an undisclosed amount of cash in the car, along with several weapons, a couple of pipe bombs, hollow point .22 caliber bullets, a grenade pin, spent shotgun shells, and empty beer cans. When all three men abandoned the car, running down a ravine, though through a wooded area, the confrontation took a deadly turn. Millard, Zapata, and Hogman arrived on scene. Probably as a result of their actions, I'm alive today, Hogman told me. It was 3 against 3, as opposed to 1 against 3. Leaving his disabled car, Hogman ran behind a guardrail, which he used for cover. Ahern and Brock continued to fire at the 3 police officers. Only now did Hogman pull his 9mm pistol to return their fire. Millard and Zapata also returned fire. Brock and Ahern were fatally wounded at the scene, but Bianchi, the getaway driver, managed to climb out of the ravine and escape. Despite all his efforts, Hogman still regrets that such a dangerous man escaped into the residential neighborhood. The fact that I let one of the bad guys that had shown a propensity for violence get out of our containment, and he was running up into a neighborhood, that still bothers me. The fact that I felt I let somebody down. Hogman got back into his bullet-riddled car and tried to locate Bianchi, but he lost his trail. The Clark County Sheriff's Office and Vancouver Police Department arrived to contain the area and start their manhunt. Aided by helicopter support, approximately 50 officers, including FBI, ATF, Washington State Troopers, K-9 officers, and SWAT teams, joined the search, but Bianchi's trail went cold. As police officers from around the area converged on the scene, Craig phoned his wife. Craig called me and said, "I've been involved in a pursuit. Everything's fine, but don't go downstairs and watch the television." Which, of course, I immediately did. Right when I turned it on, I saw Craig by the police car, and the very first thing I noticed was that he had his vest on over his shirt. Not realizing at the time that he didn't even have his vest on at the time of the shooting. But Craig had been inspecting trucks in a special assignment that morning. Crawling under trucks in a vest is very difficult. So he'd taken his vest off. Miraculously, none of the 7 bullets that hit his car harmed Craig, even though 3 came inside the vehicle. A couple of hours later, Vancouver police officer Ron Rose responded to a tip from someone in a nearby high school who'd seen a suspicious white male running through the school's ball fields. Rose spotted the man on Stapleton Road. When he ran the man's name for once, he found an outstanding warrant for a parole violation in Washington. So he arrested the man and booked him into the Clark County Jail. The parole violator turned out to be none other than Ronald Bianchi, who'd given the arresting officer his real name. When the prosecutor sat down with myself and the 2 other officers involved, he asked us what we wanted to do. We pretty much told him that the courts should decide that's fair. Let the jury make that decision. Whatever they decide, we'll accept, Craig told me. Rachel Barnes was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit robbery. She was later charged with first-degree burglary and an accomplice to first-degree robbery and with rendering criminal assistance. Bianchi ended up pleading guilty to 13 counts in exchange for Barnes's release so that she could care for their new baby, who was born after the robbery. Barnes was granted a total and complete immunity from prosecution. On May 21st, 1998, Arthur D. Curtis, the county's prosecuting attorney, and Jeannie M. Bryant, deputy prosecuting attorney, accepted a guilty plea from Bianchi for 3 counts of robbery in the first degree, 2 counts of assault in the second degree, 3 counts of attempted murder in the first degree, 3 counts of possession of stolen property in the first degree for the 3 cars he stole, attempting to elude police, and malicious explosion in the second degree for the pipe bomb explosion. As it turned out, the Wells Fargo bank robbery was unrelated. Bianchi was 26 when he was sentenced to 72 years. He'll probably serve 60 years, which would make him 86 when he gets out of prison. He and Barnes were married in the Clark County Jail before he was sentenced, but Barnes filed for divorce only weeks after he was moved from the county jail to state prison. The coroner has not discussed which officer's bullets caused the deaths of Ahern and Brock. We don't know to this day, Sergeant Hogman admitted, as tears welled in his eyes. Sergeant Craig Hogman was selected by the National Association of Police Organizations as an honorable mention winner of a Tops Cop Award. He received a Washington State Law Enforcement Medal of Honor, a certificate of appreciation from the FBI for exceptional service in the public interest, a Vancouver Police Department Medal of Valor, a Clark County Sheriff's Medal of Valor Award, and a Sons of the American Revolution Law Enforcement Medal. Most important, he won the love and respect of an entire community. Officers Millard and Zapata also received recognition for their actions, including Medal of Valor awards from the state of Washington and the Vancouver Police Department. I had the honor of presenting an American Red Cross Real Heroes Award to Sergeant Hogman and Officers Millard and Zapata. Craig Hogman didn't ask for a new car, but waited for his white Ford Crown Victoria to be restored. I wouldn't have a new car. This one and I have been through a lot together. We work well together, and I plan to keep it, he said. Vicky Hogman confided that something really good had resulted from the events of October 17, 1997. Do you know what it made us realize? How many wonderful people there are in this community. There are people to this very day that, after all this time, will come up to Craig and say, thank you for what you did 3.5 years ago. Had that not happened, we would never have been blessed enough to know that or feel that in our community. We truly feel that the good people in our community are behind you, and they do see the good things that you do, and they do appreciate it. What does the future hold for Craig Hogman? In a low voice, he modestly tells, I like it on the street. In my heart, I feel good knowing that I'm doing a good job. It's a commitment that I made to public safety. It's what I do well. And if I can help somebody, then I'll continue to do what I do until I'm ready to walk away from it. Obviously, this was years ago, 1997, that all happened. And he'd already been a veteran at that time. My assumption is that he's fully retired at this time. I don't know exactly where Sergeant Craig Hogman is right now. However, you might be able to Google him and find out. But the thing that got me about this story was this last portion that said people come up to him and they talk to him for all this time afterwards. That we would never know what a blessing we have been. Had that not happened, we would never have been blessed enough to know that or feel that in our community. We truly feel that the good people in this community are behind you, and they do see the good things that you do, and they do appreciate it. That continues to be the case for police officers across this country and around the world. The good that you do may not be necessarily said or known by a lot of people, but what you do out there, the positive that you do, the lives that you save, it is appreciated. And it is noticed by me, by people I know, and it is noticed on a grander scale. The reason that we do things, we can easily walk away. You can easily choose not to run into that burning building or not run into that school where there's an active shooter. You can easily do that. But you can also easily go in and stop people from hurting other people, or save people from fires, or save people from choices that unfortunately they make or the people they know make. That is who a hero is, and that is what a hero does. I said it before, and I'll say it again. You are that pebble in that pond, the ripples that go out, the effect that you have on others. You might lap up on shore, but you also might turn into a swell and push somebody in the direction they need to go. So never forget that you are appreciated for who you are, and the good that you do matters. It matters. So, with that, I do want to make sure that you support those that want to help support you and want to support us. And that would be A Dose of Ethos. Check those guys out. Get on there, find their workout programs, find their products, wear their shirts, get a t-shirt, get a hat from those guys. When you do go on there, type in the code, What's a Hero? You get 10% off products and programs. So check those guys out. Great guys. They have a lot of opportunities for you. Led up by my bud, Jarrett Morris. It's a good program, especially for those wanting to get in shape for the police department, for the police academy, or those of you who have been on the job for a while and maybe got a little bit softer, had a little bit too much pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving, or having too much, good candy, sweet stuff from the office during Christmas time, cookies getting brought and whatever. And you say, you know what, I'm going to have me a cookie. Well, have a cookie, enjoy it, but don't forget that you are responsible for that guy next to you, and you are responsible for that community that depends on you, and you're responsible for your family, and you need to go home to them. And if you are not in shape and you decide to stay out of shape and not be able to fight your way through, what are you saying about your family, your brothers next to you, and that community that you work for? It goes beyond your why, but it should be a part of your why. So check those guys out. If you want to get involved with the What's a Hero podcast, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn. Get a hold of us. Check us out. We can ask us questions. We're happy to talk with you. If you have questions for any of the guests, or if you have questions that you want, I could go ahead and do a whole Q&A with your guys' questions on the show. So send them to me, get online, and when you go and you have, let's say you subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you listen to, you can put in comments in there as well. You don't have to necessarily have a question, but you can put the comments in there. That can be brought up as well. So I read them all. I know I appreciate you guys for putting something out there and saying stuff. I would not be where I am without you guys. So thank you so much. And I do want to say thank you to, actually before we get there, speaking of the podcast platforms that you can listen to the show on, you can get to those via our website, which is www, as pretty much all World Wide Web websites are. Anyways, the What's a Hero podcast.buzzsprout.com. Go there, check it out. It has all the previous episodes, plus it has a link for the platforms of your choice, whatever podcast platform you like to listen to the show on. You can get into there, you can subscribe, you can share that with your friends and your family and your neighbor if you want. Instead of doing the night before Christmas this year, I know we're getting close to Christmas, you can actually just play a podcast, and that would be cool. As if. I am nowhere near that eloquent. Nevertheless, don't do that. Spend your time, Christmas time, with your family, and read Night Before Christmas or The Christmas Story. You'll shoot your eye out. But I was thinking more in the way of, Jesus being born in Bethlehem. So do what you do. Check us out. Download us. Subscribe. Enjoy it. Aside from that, I do want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the real heroes out there that sacrifice their time and their effort. Those are our nurses and our teachers and everybody in fire services, in EMT services. Thank you so much. Our police officers, you guys, I can't say enough great about you. Just giving your lives in your time, sacrificing who you are for other people. Thank you so much for everything you do. We thank you, and for our veterans who are out there keeping our country what it is. In a lot of cases in this world, the last bastion of hope for a lot of people. So thank you to our service members, our veterans, our soldiers, our airmen, our sailors, and our Marines. Thank you so much. Just remember that you have one opportunity sometimes to make it count. And this is your opportunity to make it count. When you go about doing something, you do it the best you can. Make it count. Serve other people. Help other people. Support those people that need you. You may not have another opportunity at it. And when you're no longer being a police officer, you're going to look back and say, that was probably the best job I've ever had. Or when you're no longer being a firefighter or an EMT or a nurse or a teacher, you're going to look back and say, that was my time. I want to do it again, but you can't. Sometimes that time, that sun has set. But that doesn't mean there's not a new day coming, and you have the opportunity to do more good in this world. So continue doing it. Continue being who you are. And know that when you're doing what you have before you, do that to the best of your ability, because it's your one opportunity to do it right and do it good. So until next time, I have been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.